Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Altwire podcast. My name is Derek, and this week we are joined by Dan from Hoobastank. Very excited about this podcast. I've been a fan of Hoobastank for over 20 years. I'm looking forward to seeing what Hoobastank fans have to think about this podcast. In the meantime, follow and subscribe. It's insane to think that it's been 20 years since your major label debut. How does it feel to have achieved such a milestone?
It's really cool, doing some of these interviews and talking to people like you and asking me that question. I never thought about it like that, but having, I guess, somebody ask me that makes me think about it. So it's cool. It feels different maybe to how I don't feel the way I perceive like how Aerosmith would feel 20 years after the fact, or these bands that I looked up to. To me, it's just Dan and Doug and Chris and Jesse, or
yeah.
But I have moments of like realization where it's like, holy shit, this is really cool. I'm always grateful for it, but then there's these waves of being in the moment, and it's pretty cool, dude. 20 years doing the same thing with my best friends, traveling the world, making music, meeting people, watching people smile, cry, throw us a middle finger, whatever it is, it's been pretty amazing.
I was just talking to some of my fellow writers on Altwire. When I was 15, I was listening to Hoobastank and Linkin Park. Those were the two bands I was listening to the most. And it's kind of weird that we're doing this interview now and that album's 20 years old. I'm turning 36 this year. It makes me feel old.
What's funny is that I've already been through that realization in life where I'm old. Like, it hit me years ago. It seems like you're currently going through it. To be honest with you, dude, I feel like it happens to people when they're around 36, 37, 38. It's this nostalgic moment and it's holy shit, I'm old. So it hit me a while ago, and it sucked for the first couple of years, people seeing us for the first time going and expecting us to look like we looked like in the Reason video. And they're like, dude, you guys got older. I was like, thank you. The fuck you think you look like? You got older too. You aged just as many years as we did, You might have been 15 then, but now you're 25, 27, 28 and whatever. But yeah, dude, that's really cool to hear that you were a fan of us in Linkin Park growing up, when you were in high school. That's really cool.
Yeah. And I believe I read somewhere that your first show was, I think, in 95 in Doug's parents' backyard. And if this is a correct story, I think you guys borrowed some stages from the local high school. Is this correct? If that's true, can you tell me some fun memories about that show?
Yeah, that's correct. It was 1995. And we had just a bunch of friends. We were in Agora Hills, California, which is where we went to high school, Agora High School. And we had a bunch of friends that had like trucks and vans. We all drove over to Agora High School at about midnight, 1 a.m. with skateboards in the vans because everything was locked up. And we parked in the parking lot, took the skateboards and ran over to the bleachers, went underneath the bleachers, and there was this like fold up portable stage. And we kind of took the stage. We put them on our skateboards, wheeled them over to our trucks, loaded them into the trucks, took them back to Doug's parents' house, which was a couple miles away, set them up in the backyard because his parents had this big backyard with, a lot of grass. Set them up back there, used a bunch of like our amplifiers as PA speakers, as well as guitar amps. And we put on a concert in his parents' backyard. It was pretty ambitious and pretty fun. And there's a video of it. I do have a VHS video of it. It's pretty cool because there's some of our performance in there. And then there's all like the kids running around who were about our age, our peers. The Incubus guys are all there. It's probably about 1995. They're there in the crowd hanging out. Some of the Linkin Park guys before it was Linkin Park, like Brad Delson, his band opened up actually.
The Pricks, right?
Yeah, at that time they were called the Pricks, maybe. Yeah, I think so. They were the Pricks. But it's funny, dude, because like there's like, it was at a time where I still have the VHS camera. My parents bought it for me. And I wanted it specifically because you could just drop in, you hold it on your shoulder, you can just drop in VHS tapes. And at that time, that's all we had was VCRs. So either myself or a friend would be running around his parents' backyard throughout the day as the bands are playing and kids are coming in and out. So it's capturing all these guys there, which I've seen it a million times, but for people that haven't seen it, you'd probably trip out. You know, it's pretty cool.
Do you think that's something you'll eventually transfer maybe onto digital to release as part of the docuseries you guys have been doing?
Well, I've already transferred it. I spent all like 2020 when it was the lockdown. I transferred so much old tapes to digital. I have tons of footage. So I don't know. I don't know what I'll do with it, to be honest with you. I've thought about it over the years. And a good friend of mine who was in a band called Audio Vent, that was back in that time too. Ben Einziger, he's actually the younger brother of Mike Einziger, who's the guitar player of Incubus. But Ben and I are good friends. And we always, when we talk, the two of us can just back and forth for hours about that time period, about all of our bands being local and growing up. And we all went to high school together and stuff. So we've talked about it before. I've brought it up to him about maybe the two of us doing some type of narration type of a thing and talking about stuff and just joking around, because that's what we always would do. We'd kind of clown each other, joke around, but we all love each other too. So I don't know, dude. I don't know what I'll do with it. I'm not sure. I know that those bands probably would not like it to be released. Everyone's like 17 years old, 18 years old in it. So.
Well, I know at least for the Linkin Park fans out there, having any footage of the Pricks would be like the holy grail for them, because, anything that Brad did before he joined the band, like we have none of it.
Well, it's funny because I have it. And I mean, as I'm talking to you, you can see my head's down. It's because I'm looking at my phone and, yeah. And as I'm trying to talk to him, trying to scroll and see, I'm not going to play anything, but see, I do have specifically a scene where I'm standing in the backyard filming from Brad's side of the stage. And it's them playing, and it's their original singer, Mark, who was also a friend of ours from high school. It's all that shit, dude. It's pretty interesting.
What was your favorite part of revisiting your history and this album for the documentary?
It just reminded me of how much we have done as a band and as friends, and how many hours we have put in as a band, whether it was leading up to getting a record deal. I mean, we were together for 5 years before we signed a record deal, just rehearsing 3 to 4 days a week at our parents' houses, 4 hours a night, whatever it was. Like I said, for 5 years. So and playing shows during that time in Hollywood all over the place, and just kind of grassroots growing. Then moved on and did got a record deal. And at that point we were back down at the bottom of the ladder that we had just climbed up. Now we're back at the bottom of it, got a record deal, had to climb up that one. And there's just, so seeing all the footage of it or photos of it and being reminded like, wow, we did that. That's right. We did that. Wow, we did that. We went there, we went everywhere many times. All over the world, and there was usually a camera around. So, dude, it's crazy. Yeah, 20 years later, seeing the shit and kind of going like, oh yeah, it's cool.
And looking back at your career, what are some lessons you've learned the hard way that you wish you knew at the onset?
To breathe more. I think that I've learned that I'm a micro breather, like kind of like a dog pants, and I don't get enough oxygen going through my brain. And so then I kind of freak out a little bit or make decisions without clear head, I don't know. I feel like just taking time and really thinking about the decisions that you're going to make that will be the long lasting ones. We're talking about this shit 20 years later, there's a lot of things that we did, said, looked like that we might like everybody does. You look back, 20 years later, you're like, oh my God, what was I thinking? What a dipshit, Or you look back and you go, wow, that was cool.
You did release an album before Selfrelease. They sure don't make basketball shorts like they used to. How would you compare recording your self-released album versus the recording of your major label debut? What was the difference between those?
Well, the major label debut was funded by the record label. and it was a grip of money. So we had the time, the resources to just go in every single day and spend hours upon hours upon hours. The previous stuff was a bunch of demos that we had made over the years, probably from like 1997 to 1999 or 98, maybe. Without a year. So maybe 96 to 99, somewhere in there in the mid to late 90s. We would go into the studio when we could. We didn't have money. We would go in and we would work with the producer, Jim Wirt, in Santa Monica. And he, we would go in and he would kind of chop up our songs a little bit if they were too long, and we would veer left here or veer right here. And he helped us grow and developed us as a band and as, I would say, songwriters. The actual approach to recording was very similar, though. At that time, we were still recording to tape. We weren't doing there was no Pro Tools really yet, or Logic at all. And we recorded our album, The Island, first release on tape as well, with the same guy, with Jim Wirt. So there was a lot of similarities. It was just the difference would have been the budget. We had a lot more time and money making the record, which was rad at that point, because then we didn't have to wait weeks in between to go and record. We were hungry as shit and we just wanted to be there. And so we would be there all day, all night long.
And in the beginning, what would you say were some of your biggest influences in the beginning as an artist? Like, what guitarist influenced you the most?
When I was a kid, I liked Jimi Hendrix. But I also didn't really know what to like or what I liked. I think I was just kind of learning at that time. And I wasn't necessarily into guitar players as much as I was into just songs and music and the feeling I got from hearing songs, like other artists' songs, and that wasn't just the guitar. That was everything to me. I would kind of listen to everything. But then as I got a little bit older, I never was like I love Eddie Van Halen. I think Eddie Van Halen is the greatest guitar player of all time, but
Agreed.
I never went that way. I never looked at that and it didn't speak to me in the way that I felt I could ever achieve that. I couldn't do that. Maybe I could, and I don't know. But I liked other stuff, bluesier things. I like Stevie Ray Vaughan, Eric Clapton, who all these guys can rip and shred, but it's slightly different. Then John Frusciante, I really was into him in the early 90s, mid 90s. I got into Junior Brown, who's a good country guitar player. He's a country songwriter, singer, but he's just really cool. On that first album or music that we had made, that Basketball Shorts record, there's a song on there called Naked Jockman. And the guitar stuff is, I was 16, 17 years old at the time, or 18, I don't remember, somewhere around there. But the guitar was inspired by Primus. That's what we were listening to a ton back then. And then this just happened. We were flying home from Denver, or we were connecting in Denver to fly home from a show. And I'm waiting in line to get on the plane. And I look behind me and I see this girl wearing a South Park 20-year or a concert shirt. And I was like, oh, dope. She must have been at the show that was 2 nights ago. And I look, and then there's Larry standing right next to her. It was his daughter. They got on the plane and they were sitting right by me. And I was like, I wanted to say something and I didn't, but when we got to LAX, I happened to be down by baggage claim, just kind of looking up to see where my bag was, what carousel was going to be on. And one dude walks up right next to me, and just him. And I just go, boom, and it's him. And so then I started talking to him, and he was just fucking awesome. We were so stoked. Then the whole band showed up and we were just so stoked.
And that was one of your first time meeting that particular idol. Is that correct? You didn't meet him prior to that?
That was the first time I ever met him. I'd seen Primus play a ton when I was younger, and I was telling him about it. And he had figured out, or maybe I said that I was there with my band, and we had just watched the South Park thing that he had did the night before meeting him. And what a trip it is to now meet him. And he knew my band very well. He's like, oh, yeah, you guys are from Calabasas. And he was cool as shit. And we were super stoked because we had just been kind of going down that Larry rabbit hole on YouTube a couple weeks prior to that, in our dressing room, warming up, watching his guitar stuff on the Gibson channel or whatever it was. And then we just get to meet him, and it was pretty rad.
Dude, that had to be such a feather in your cap, having an artist that you looked up to as a kid saying, I know exactly who you are. I know your band. That had to feel good.
It did. It felt great. And it just happened the other day. Like not the other day, but it happened 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, right? Whenever that concert happened, it was a couple days after. So,
So I wanted to talk about something that's not exactly related to your first album, but it's still in the early part of your history. I wanted to know if you could give me some fun stories about the video shoot for Same Direction. You had so many guest stars. You had Chester, you had Kanye. I think you even had, I think it was Joel from Good Charlotte in that. Could you just tell me like a little bit story about the process of shooting that video?
getting those cameos was a very like last minute thing. And I don't know if some of that happened actually morning of the video shoot. Like we could have been on set and started calling those guys, and maybe we had advanced it with a couple of them, but it started to kind of unfold and develop as we were there. The treatment was already written because it was going to be part 2. It was the follow up to The Reason. Like we had this idea to make like a part 2. And we were just, I mean, dude, it was back then, it was like this big production, you know, we were coming off of The Reason, which was huge for us and huge for the record label. So all this money was going into making this video. So it was just this huge set and production and catering. And actually, I think maybe MasterCard paid for the video. We did 2 videos for that song, but that particular one, it was a MasterCard campaign where they had students helping with it or something like that. So there were just all these young people running around on set. It was a ton of fun. And then the cameos started showing up, you know, and at that time, you know, Kanye West wasn't the Kanye West that everybody knows today. He was, he was still a genius, but he just was different, you know. We were constantly at that time, because of The Reason having so much success, we were constantly going everywhere around the world to all these different award shows, whether it was Japan or it was Bangkok or it was Rome, Italy, and doing all these MTV award shows or blah, 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 whatever they were, at the same time as Kanye and his people. So he was always really cool to us. We were on the same record label too. So we would see him at all these different events. Like we would have private events with the record label, and then there he is. And he was always so genuine and sweet to us. And the first time we ever met him, it was before we ever shot the Same Direction video. This is what it was. Now it's coming back to me. So we were in Germany doing this thing called Top of the Pops, which is like a big television show. And he was doing it as well. They have all these different bands and artists doing it. And we had heard of who Kanye West was, but he was a big deal. And it was 2004. We're in our dressing room backstage, and then all of a sudden he walks into our dressing room and he's just like, "Hey, what's up, you guys?" And kind of came in and had this very childlike energy to him and introduced himself. And he was with his manager and whoever else. And was just like, "I love your video, The Reason. Like, that's a dope video. You know, who came up with that idea? Like, what? It's not just a regular video. There's a story and it's clever," and whatever he was saying. So we started talking about the backstory of that and how that came about. And he was just so interested in making the video and being creative and not just whatever he was doing, rapping. And he was very vocal about it. And so kept seeing him after that at different things. And then it was time to do the Same Direction video. And one of us called one of his people. I don't know how we were at the same label. So somebody just hit him up and hit up his people. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm in town and I'll do it." And he came out and hung out and was cool as shit, and was the only one out of everybody that actually sat there with the lyric sheet and was like, "All right, I'm going to learn the words to this song," while he's hearing it in the background while there's other people doing takes, you know. And a couple of them, I think Chester was there at the same time as Kanye, and maybe they all were there at the same time. I can't remember, but he was the only one that like learned words to a degree on the fly. It was quick and it was pretty cool. Yeah, he was super friendly and engaged. And yeah, and then Chester was there, and we had known Chester already because we had done the Linkin Park tour. And he was actually the last person we had ever met in Linkin Park, because we already known Brad and Mike from high school for many years. And then had met Dave. And we knew Rob as well, because Rob went to Calabasas, and we all kind of grew up in the same area, and everybody just we all kind of knew who each other were. So Chester was there. Chester was super cool. That was fun. He was funny as shit, did his thing, and started yelling. I remember he just started getting into it and yelling at us, like to kind of pick it up and keep up with him. And he was going to kind of play this like arrogant role, you know, which was pretty funny. In part of the transferring of my footage, there's the behind the scenes stuff that was shot there. And I didn't realize that we're all hanging out before the performance in the trailer. And he's with us hanging out back there too, like with the director and stuff, just kind of just talking about what was going to happen. And then Joel from Good Charlotte was there. I don't remember. Maybe I called him. One of us called, and we were doing a lot of stuff with those guys, and they were always really, really, really cool to us. So he showed up, and then our buddy Billy, who's the biggest dude in the cameos. He's just a friend of ours, a really close friend of ours, who's funny as shit and was part of the record label at the time. So they were the cameos.
And maybe this is already planned, but you got me thinking of something else I wanted to ask. You have gone through literally years of footage. Even though this documentary series was meant to coincide with the first album, do you think as episodes go on, you might also start to, reveal some behind the scenes of the Same Direction video or other things as you progress through the footage you've accumulated over your career?
Yeah, we have I think a 20-year anniversary coming up for the Reason album. And although we didn't video or film much in the studio at all during that period. There's maybe a little bit of footage, but it's nothing really. I could release it, and I probably would if we do some type of a thing for that. But at that point, you'll see in the docuseries of the first record, it kind of goes through before we were a signed band, when we signed the record deal, when we're in the studio, then when the world kind of meets us and whatever it is and whatever. It's just all about that. So then maybe this picks up somewhere after that. I don't know. It's not us in the studio, though. It's just us. It's a lot of footage of us touring, behind the scenes stuff of us goofing off backstage, playing some cool shows, going to some award shows backstage, whatever, just things like that. And we could possibly figure something out. I'd like to do something with it. I mean, it's there, and I've kept it for so many years and probably have hoped in the back of my mind that we would do something with it at some point. But dude, I have so much footage. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of behind the scenes, just us sitting on set at the Reason, on the Reason shoot, or the home video cameras here, and over there is the part of the heist scene. And you hear, you see the director, and then you see me walk in, and they're like, "All right, Dan, and action." And it comes in, I'm ripping the thing off, and it's shit like that, which is cool. But we would probably do current interviews, reflecting on it and going, talking about it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also actually, on the docuseries too, in the 20-year for the first record, after it comes out, it's going to come out, each episode's going to be about once every 2 weeks, I think. And each episode is between 5 and 7 minutes long. Episode 1 is currently out right now on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. Because you were talking about like behind the scenes footage of videos. It's got us talking a little bit about some of the video shoots. There is video behind the scenes footage on the Remember Me video shoot, which is kind of cool.
Nice. Not
the crawling video. I have behind the scenes footage of the Running Away video, but they didn't put any in the series. So there's more. We might release at the end of this. We might put up just blocks of, if you want to be a fly on the wall and just watch. I mean, some of it's boring as shit, but some people just want to watch and see what it was like, and there's a lot of moments like that. Yeah. There's some footage of me in the studio, playing Give It Back on guitar, and Doug singing the song Give It Back, which is not really in the docuseries. So we are thinking about afterwards, just kind of going, here it is. You can, instead of us talking about what we're doing, here's just, now you can just watch and listen to what it sounded like before it was finished, or without those vocals in it.
And that's the kind of stuff that hardcore fans really like, seeing the puzzle pieces coming together. Maybe if there's even some demo lyrics in there, those are the type of things that I think hardcore fans would really like.
I agree. And those are the people that we do it for, because it is very tedious and very time consuming. And sometimes I look at the numbers of how many people have actually watched what what I've worked on or somebody else has worked on. And I'm like, fuck, is it worth it? Like the amount of time it takes to do this, like when we have, you'll have this many numbers of people that follow you, but then only this many people watch it. I'm like,
yeah.
But if it makes that many people happy, then it makes me happy. That it's there, and I do want people to see it, because it is kind of cool when I bump into somebody at a show and they're like randomly bring something up from it. I'm like, oh, okay, this person really cares and gives a shit.
What can we expect from you guys in the future besides the docuseries and your upcoming tour? Do you have anything planned that you might want to talk about or discuss?
We're not really actively writing music right now. I mean, there's a bunch of music like sitting there in folders, and it possibly will be worked on. I go through periods myself where I'm working, writing, or making something up, whatever it is, and then it just stops. But once I finish those, they all go to Doug. And then Doug has them and listens to them as we travel. And, as he's listening, he'll have ideas in his head and he notes those down. But as far as like getting together and, moving forward with anything more than that, not quite right this second. We're all kind of just doing family home things at the moment. But I hope that we could put some new shit out. Maybe not I don't know if I want to do a full album. I don't know if people do full albums anymore. I've been saying for like 10 years, kind of like I said earlier about the amount of views you get when you have this many followers, but then you get this many views and you do so much work hoping you're going to, it's a lot of work. And I don't know if I want to do 12 songs, 10 songs, and put all this effort and emotion and blood, sweat, and tears into something that nobody hears, when we could just do that with 5 songs and it'd just be a lot smoother.
I think that's the direction that everything's going. I spoke to Art of Everclear, and he said the same thing. I think we're slowly going to start to see the death of the old album format. I think a lot of bands are just going to go to, we just finished a song, here you go, versus a full album.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Fingers crossed.
It would make it easier for everyone else, right?
Yeah, to be honest with you, the same amount of people that would be watching the docuseries are the pretty much same amount of people that really would be stoked to hear new music. Everybody else, I think, just wants to hear Crawling in the Dark, The Reason, Running Away, Out of Control, and whatever else they may have heard of, Because to be honest with you, sometimes a band that has been doing it for as long as us or longer, when they put out new music, I'm like, no. Why? You don't have to. You didn't have to do that, you guys. Like you had so much cool shit to play anyways that people want to see and will show up to see. I understand that you want to get something out if you have music to get out of you, but sometimes my personal opinion is when I hear it, I'm like, yeah, bullshit was better, guys. I know people say that about us. It's just what happens.
Everyone's a critic, right?
Yeah.
But that is pretty much all I have. I do want to thank you for taking the time to do this podcast with us. Looking forward to maybe catching you guys on tour sometime down the road.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's been a nice chat. I like your shirt. Yeah. But yeah, thanks for having me.